look too far away. What's up guys, welcome back. Today, this is a DIY channel. I am super excited about this project. If you clicked on this because of the title or maybe the picture, I am going to show you how to make this crocheted little bucket bag, drawstring bag, out of, this is not yarn, this is recycled t-shirts. This turned out really cool. I'm super stoked about it. So I've been watching a bunch of DIY videos lately and a bunch of sewing channels, and a lot of people are really into not only upcycling and recycling clothes and scrap fabric because it's cheaper than buying new fabric, but also it's a lot better for the environment. You're not producing as much waste and throwing away all of your scrap fabric. So this is a project you can do if you've got old t-shirts that maybe don't fit anymore, or if they're a little dirty and you don't really wear them. Or you can just use scrap fabric that you have laying around. So I am going to show you how to cut up your t-shirts and turn it into yarn basically, and make this cute little bag. And if you're worried about not knowing how to crochet, check down below. There is a link to a crochet tutorial that I put up as well. It's just covering the basics, just kind of for beginners. And I cover 4 stitches, I believe, and we're gonna use 2 of them to make this bag. I've also, as kind of a test one, I made this bag, which is more of a backpack. It's got a shoulder strap. You can do color block stripes like this. This one was easier. I actually really like how the effect turned out, but I didn't know if I would have enough of this fabric to do the color block stripes, so I just kind of combined them all into this one. It's this cute little bag. It's got handles, a drawstring that you can pull open, and it's lined, I don't know how well you can see that. It's lined on the inside, and I will show you how to do all of that. So let's go ahead and get started. So if you're using t-shirts like I did, you're gonna need about 3 t-shirts worth of fabric for this. I used 4 because of the colors I wanted to use and because the t-shirts I had already had fabric taken out of them, so they weren't full t-shirts. So what you're gonna do is take your t-shirt and cut any of the areas where it's thicker, around where the seams are or around the collar and sleeves, and just go ahead and trim those off. Then you'll lay it out in front of you and try to cut apart like the shoulders or the side if you need to where it's been attached, and basically try to get yourself a rectangle of fabric to work with. So once you have your t-shirt laid out, you'll go ahead and start cutting it into thin strips, probably about 1/4 of an inch thick. And if you're using stretchy t-shirt fabric, as you can kind of see that I'm doing here, you'll want to cut it along the fabric so that when you stretch it out, it pulls tight so it's longer, and it'll kind of roll up into a tube like you can see a little bit here, and that'll make your fabric easier to work with, and it'll make it stretch further. So here I'm just taking all my t-shirts and I'm trying to use as much of the fabric as possible and just cut it up into strips and stretch out each strip as I go and just get all of my colors ready to go. So once you have all your fabric cut up, if that wasn't fun enough for you, now you get to tie all the pieces together. I know it sounds kind of terrible, but honestly, to cut up all 4 of those t-shirts, tie all the pieces together, and roll them into yarn balls took about 2.5 hours. So for this project, I just kind of went back and forth between the colors. I didn't worry about making sure there was an even amount of each color. I just kind of grabbed at random. And as you can see when I'm not accidentally tying off camera, when you tie your strings together, don't worry about the little tails left over between each one. We'll worry about those later. So now that I've got all of my strings tied together for the multicolored ones separate from the brown ones, I've rolled them all into a ball just to make it easier to work with and make sure things don't get tangled. You don't have to do this. This is just something I like to do to keep everything organized, so I went ahead and did that. So now that I've got everything started and ready to go, I'm going to get started with the base of the project. So I'm going to get started with my chain stitch, and we're going to be starting with the bottom of the bag. So I'm going to chain about 21 stitches to make my bag about 6 inches across. So now I'm going to start double crocheting each row and do about 9 rows, I think, to make a square for the bottom of the bag. So we're going to start the body of the bag. We're making a big rectangle to go around the base. I'm going to go ahead and start with the brown, and I'm going to stitch about 75 stitches. This might vary a little bit depending on how loose or tight your stitches are, but 75 is a good way to start, and then in a bit I will show you how to double check that it's going to fit around the base of your bag. Okay, so now I have my base and I have my chain, and all I'm going to do is just lay it around the edges of the base to see if it fits. I'm not pulling too tight, but I'm not leaving it loose either. I'm trying to be as accurate as possible, laying it evenly along the edges and make sure that it's going to fit. I decided that it wouldn't quite reach, so I went ahead and chained an extra 5 to bring it up to 80 stitches. Now I'm going to go ahead and start using double crochets to make the body of the bag. I'm going to crochet 2 rows of the same brown color as the base before I change colors and use the multicolored yarn to create the rest of the bag. Here I just trimmed off the excess brown yarn and tied the multicolored yarn to it to start the new color. You want to make sure that you're tying the multicolored as close to the base of your work as possible, so that when you chain and start the next row, you're not carrying the brown up to the next row. You want to make sure that you're starting with that multicolored string. I'll now continue to double crochet the next few rows with the multicolored string for about 8 more rows, giving you a total of 10. Now that I've finished my rows, I'm going to tie off the yarn and get ready to attach the base. I'll be using my leftover brown yarn to attach the pieces together. It doesn't really matter at this point which side of the rectangle is the front or the back. If there's one piece that looks better to you, that's fine, but it really doesn't matter at this point. So the way we're going to attach these is by laying the square base of the piece next to the rectangle, lined up with the edge, and we're basically going to treat this as if you're crocheting a new row on top of one row, but you're really crocheting the two layers together, if that makes sense. So you'll want to start by looping your end through both pieces, and then I've just tied it off here so that it doesn't slip out and I don't forget to do that later. So now that we're ready to get started, you'll put your hook through both layers. It can be a little tricky if the fabric's kind of stiff. But again, I put the hook through both layers, and I'm going to be doing a slip stitch. So I've placed it through the loops in both layers and just pulled the yarn over through them both. It can be a little tough when you first get started, just trying to make sure that you're keeping it even. That's all that you need to worry about. Sometimes if loops are bigger than the other, it's okay to do it twice in the same loop. You just want to make sure you're not creating any gaps and that you're just keeping everything even as you go. Now that I've reached the end, you can kind of start to see that it's creating a little bit of a ridge. I'll show that more to you later. But now to turn to your next corner, you're just going to fold the rectangular piece around. Keep going. If you need to create extra space to get around that corner, you can do the slip stitch twice in the same stitch to make sure that you're not snagging it and making it too tight and causing the corner to kind of collapse, and you'll just keep going around the entire base of the bag this way. Now that we have the base all attached, as you can see, there's a seam that goes around the bottom and up the side. So now we have our bag here, and if you like, you can turn it inside out at this point if you don't want to see that seam. You can flip it inside out just as if you had sewn it. The seam will be hidden. That can be the outside of your bag. I actually did this with the backpack I mentioned before. That's what the seam looks like when it's flipped inside out. There's the seam down the side. I actually kind of prefer the seam on the bucket bag. I think it gives it a little bit more structure and looks kind of cool, so I'm going to leave mine with the seam on the outside, but that is up to you, whichever your preference. Next comes the fun part where we get to deal with all of those little tails from tying all the strings together. If you actually like this kind of furry look, you are totally welcome to leave those. It would probably make things a lot easier and save you some time. I didn't want them on the outside of my bag, so what we can do is flip them all to the inside. Now you can use your crochet hook to help pull it through if you're in a tight spot, but honestly, I find the easiest way is to just kind of poke them through with your fingers. So you'll go around your whole bag, poke in all of those little tails like this. Now we've come to the lining on the inside. You do not have to do this step on that backpack. I actually just left it and left all of the little furries on the inside. It didn't really bother me. I don't plan on putting pencils or anything that are going to fall through, but if you want to do this lining, it's really easy, and it'll hide all those little tails we just spent all that time tucking inside and keep things from falling out. So you're going to need 2 pieces of fabric. I know this one doesn't really match, but it's the fabric I had and it's close enough, so this is just what I'm going to use. So you'll need a square piece at the bottom. For this size, the square is 5 3/4 inches squared, so that's 5 3/4 inches on all 4 sides, and then the rectangular piece is 7 inches by 25 inches long. So once you have this cut, all you have to do is run a hem around the top part of the rectangle and then attach the square base to the rectangle exactly the same way as we did when we stitched up the crocheted part of the bag. You'll go all around all 4 sides of the square and then up the side to create the same sort of bucket shape. I actually had some extra inches left over on the rectangle, but that was okay. It was just really easy to trim off. So now you're just going to squish that lining inside your bag, make sure it's all lined up. You want it to be a little bit shorter than the outside of the bag. We want to leave that top row of the stitches open so that we can weave our drawstring through there later. Once you have the lining in place, you can flip the bag inside out and pin it in place. And you'll go ahead and sew it on just like anything else. You can sew to crocheted material. I've done it many times before. It holds just as well. This can be a little tricky to get in your sewing machine because it's so thick. I had to kind of pull it through a little bit sometimes, but I did get it to work out and it's stitched to the bag just fine. Okay, for our last couple of steps, we just have to make the handles and make the drawstring and thread that through. So now we've got our bag that's all lined and ready to go. I'm just going to use whatever leftover colored fabric I have for the handles. In this case, I had some of the teal and the red left, so I'm going to do a handle in each color and then use the leftover brown string for the drawstring. So for the handles, I just chained, I think, about 30 stitches. I'm not really sure. You can just kind of measure and see what you like. And then I just did 1 row of double crochets. So there I have each of my handles. Since it's only 1 row, they kind of wrinkled up a little bit, but you can mess around with them and kind of smush them flat and they'll lay nicer. So for your drawstring, you just want to make it long enough that it can go around the bag and that you'll still be able to open it wide enough. I didn't make it long enough to open all the way because I didn't think I would need it. So I just made it long enough to reach around the bag. Then to weave it through, you can just pick whatever spot you want to be the front of your bag and just use your fingers and weave the drawstring through every few stitches, whatever you think looks good. I think I did about every 3 or 4. Then you can cinch your bag together and tie a knot in the end of your strings so that they don't fall out. So now all that's left is to add the handles. I just space them out wherever I like, and I just cut a little bit of the extra string and tied them on super easy. So now that we've got our recycled t-shirt bag, I really hope you enjoyed making it as much as I did. If you make your own projects, I would love to hear about it below. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll catch you next time. See ya!